Hi, my name is Ken, and I am the grumpy old grognard. And you have stumbled into the grumpy old grognard's attic. Welcome. Uh, I'm not going to make videos constantly. I just, first of all, there's a lot of smart people on YouTube already saying the things that I want to say better than I could say them. So I don't really see any point. And two, it requires, if you want to be like a regular video guy, you have to do a lot of stuff that these days is kind of distasteful, like following geek culture, which is what we're going to talk about today. I'm not going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons much because that's not what this is about today. Today we're going to talk about geek culture. In fact, next video is also going to be about geek culture because there's a lot going on, and I really do feel like I have something to say that's not being said. Okay, so let's start out by pissing a whole bunch of you off. Okay, there's a lot of rage now about season 2 of the Rings of Power. Star Wars Acolyte. New Trek, right? The last season of Doctor Who. Just lots of tearing at sackcloth and gnashing of teeth about these old franchises that have been reimagined by our new corporate overlords at Disney and Amazon Prime. Just want to throw out there that I do not share this rage. I don't. Sorry, I don't think any of them were, well, I mean, whatever. And that's a big problem for Disney, and we'll get to that. I think first I need to tell you a little bit about myself, because I've been told in no uncertain terms by a large number of people that what I think doesn't matter because I'm not a real fan. Okay. Fine. Okay, fine. Okay. I'm not a big fan of labels. You don't want to call me a fan. You don't have to. But I have spent tens of thousands of dollars on this stuff. So I think that at least gives me a vote, right? So, let me tell you a little about my personal relationship with some of these franchises. Because if I'm not a fan, I still do have some kind of connection with these franchises. So let me just tell you a little about them, and then you can decide for yourself whether or not you consider me a real fan or not. I was born in January of 1965, which means when Star Trek was canceled, I was 3 years old. I did not have the privilege or the good fortune to be able to enjoy it as in its broadcast run. But I'm told I was quite the Lost in Space fan. Unfortunately, that didn't last long because, you don't stay 3 years old forever. It faded. I kind of lost interest in it pretty quickly because it's the same show over and over and over again. It's a formulaic 1960s TV. It's nothing particularly, imaginative or creative about the story. It's just a formula that they do every week. Meet an alien. Dr. Smith does something mean, cruel, stupid, or whatever. And then everybody has to fix the problem that Dr. Smith created, and that's the end of the show. Loved it. It's a great show if you're 3. It's not so great if you're 6. 2 important things, like very important things, happened to me when I was 6, and neither of them had anything to do with Lost in Space. Now I understand that I am not a real fan. Fine. Okay. But one of the 2 things that happened to me was that I had the privilege of discovering Star Trek in syndication. It started to become very popular in syndication. And even when I was traveling across the country, right, we would pull into a town and we'd get a space in like the RV park, and we would set up our TV, and we would watch whatever was available in that town at that time. But I would always run out to the front office and get one of those. They have the cheap TV guides, not the fancy ones, like the really cheap local papers. Put them out, and I would grab one of those, and I would rummage through it to see if Star Trek was on. If I had to, I would even buy a paper, rummage through it, and see if I could find if Star Trek was on today. If it was, I would watch it. So about half the time, even if the local paper said it was on at a certain time, about half the time you'd be able to get it. And the other half of the time, maybe you were out of broadcast range, or your sister wanted to watch the Brady Bunch or something like that. But I was in a tough spot because my parents had just broken up. And now, it took me a while to realize what was happening. I was only 6. But when I did realize it, it was very depressing. And I found myself fumbling. Now, I had fallen in love with this show when I was 6. So all I cared about was the aliens and the phasers and the spaceships. That's Star Trek for me. But as my life became hard, as being an oldest child in a single parent home is always hard. As my life became hard, Star Trek began to fill a role in my life that I desperately needed filled. I had no male role models in my life. I lived with my mother and her sister and my aunt's daughter and my sister. I was in estrogen hell. Okay. I didn't even want to leave my room. That's the way my house was. Okay. My mom had a touch of wanderlust. She tended to drag us along on her adventures. There was a 9-year period when I went to 8 different schools. For reals. Okay? I was always the new kid. It was tough. People aren't gentle with the new kid. At least they weren't in the early 70s. They were not gentle with the new kid. Got into a lot of fights. In fact, I think it's safe to say I got into at least 1 or 2 fights at every school. Every single one. This made me a problem child. But at least through this ordeal, I had Star Trek. And developmentally, you got to understand that a 6-year-old is in a very, he's in a state to be influenced. This is when we develop as men, to be entirely honest with you, and without a man to reach out to. The only role models that I had were Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock and Scotty, Dr. McCoy. These were my male role models in my life. And as I grew older and I became more able to understand some of the more important nuances and intricacies of these stories that I wasn't able to pick up on when I was 6, right? But as I became more intellectually able to grasp concepts like courage and dedication and perseverance and diplomacy and honor, well, Star Trek gave me the introductions to these concepts that a house full of women just simply could not. Here comes. Put your hate messages down below. It's good for the algorithm. In any event, Star Trek was a good companion to me throughout my life. I depended on it, and it never let me down. But it did start to get a little old after a while because, the 70s was a bit of a wasteland, science fiction wise, geek wise, culture wise. It just wasn't anything out there. I mean, maybe a couple things might have slipped by that I wasn't allowed to watch because I was 10, but, there really was nothing. There were talks. Maybe we'll have a new series. Maybe we'll have a movie. There were talks about bringing Star Trek back, but nothing ever happened until 1978. It was 1978, right? I think I was 13. So yeah, 1978. I saw Star Wars, and I fell in love. And I went back the next night, and I watched it again. And I wanted to go back to that again the next day, but my mom said we couldn't afford to. So I stole some money from my aunt, and I went again. I've done a lot of things in my life that I'm not proud of. But yeah, I saw the movie 3 times in the theaters. And then, oh God, my dad he had one of those big old clunky old Betamax machines. And I watched it every time I went to see him because he managed to get one of those, they have these tapes that they pass around. They're like demo tapes, or they're not demo tapes though. I mean, it's the whole movie. It's cropped on the sides, but it's the whole movie. And I watched it over and over and over and over and over and over. Watched it constantly. Every time I visited my dad, I would watch this movie 50 times easy. I've seen New Hope at least 50 times. Of course, we didn't call it New Hope, right? It was just called Star Wars, because it was the only Star Wars movie. But I loved it. It finally had something new, and I eagerly awaited the second movie. And I got to tell you, by that time, I was so into this movie. We had heroes again. We had stories again. We had... There's a point in the second movie that we all remember where Darth Vader tells Luke, "I am your father. Search your feelings. You know it to be true." And I was so... I don't know how to put this. I was so wrapped up in the character of Luke that when he said that, my brain went ahead and did whatever mental gymnastics that it had to do to convince me that I knew that too. Literally, it was deja vu when I saw that moment. Okay? All my friends were like, "Oh," and I was like, doesn't everybody already know that? Yeah, but I loved it. Star Wars was awesome. But I'm not a real fan. I have the role-playing game and a bunch of t-shirts. Pretty much every video game that's worth playing. I've spent a lot of money on Star Wars. But again, that doesn't make me a real fan. Apparently, I have to be declared a real fan by another real fan. Which I guess I'm not, so oh well. In any event, I guess that's to high school. High school was a D&D time for me, okay? And we're going to talk a lot more about D&D, trust me, because there's, as you well know, there's a lot of stuff going on in the industry that I'm not particularly peaked on. But there's still a lot of fun stuff to talk about, too, like older stuff, new stuff that's not Dungeons and Dragons. So, yeah, still my key. But back to movies, because high school also brought me into Doctor Who. I discovered Doctor Who, and I don't know if you've ever watched the old classical Doctor Who's, not the new ones with the fancy special effects and the glitzy makeup and all that. I'm talking about the old one, which is done on a shoestring budget, and all the aliens are just like paper mache puppets and people in rubber masks, and God, I love that show. I love it. It was so stupid, but I love that show. Uh, and as a horny teenage boy, I had a bit of a crush on Leela. Uh, yeah, that was actually a big factor with me too. I remember I used to adore Blake Seven, and I would never miss it. And I'm pretty sure that part of the reason for that was, Jenna. Uh, but hey, horny teenagers will be horny teenagers. It's just, what you are is what you are. I won't say Doctor Who was a formative thing. Again, I'm not a real fan. Just love Doctor Who. Bought the role playing game. There were only a couple of video games, but they were actually, for point and click adventure games, they weren't bad. Not a real fan, but I followed it all the way to the end. At the end of the classical episodes, I did watch the newer episodes, and I actually did very much enjoy them. They kind of irked me at first because the high production values was kind of incongruent with what Doctor Who is to me, right? But I was willing to forgive it, and I enjoyed it, and it was good, so fine, we'll go ahead and enjoy it. And they weren't short on pretty girl companions either, now were they? But the old ones, yeah, wait, that's where my heart is. But again, not a real fan. Not a real fan of Tolkien, apparently, because when I got to college, again, college, I played a lot of D&D still. But I also made some new friends that were more eggheady. And one of the things that we would do, and we didn't do it a lot, 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a year. I don't remember, but they were some of the most wonderful evenings I've spent in my life. We would get together in the dorm, and we would do bong hits, and we would drink beers, and we would drink wine and whatever else we could get. And drinking age back then, by the way, was 18, kids. Sucks to be you, man. And I have a hunch that our generation probably handles our booze better because of that. But hey, we would stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning, arguing about, talking about, discussing Tolkien. And not the story, the story, but we were more concerned with the lore. We were more concerned with talking about the stuff in the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings, the appendices, the letters. He wrote a lot of letters. Now I never really got the privilege of reading many of the letters, but a friend of mine had a book with all his letters in it, and we would go over that as kind of a, okay, so fine, this isn't canon, but this is what he intended, and this informs what we're talking about. So we would go over that stuff. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun, And down the road, I used what I learned to run a Middle Earth campaign, which was actually pretty good, but that was after college. Yeah. So, again, I don't hold these new shows in the same contempt that a lot of people do. I think Disney's problem, though, is that's Disney's problem, not the critical drinker, not Nerdrotic. Their problem is me. Critical drinker watched your stupid fucking show. I didn't. That's why The Acolyte's getting canceled. It's not getting canceled because Critical Drinker watched it. It's getting canceled because I didn't. And I didn't because I don't give a fuck about Star Wars anymore. The brand's destroyed. It's gone. I don't watch it anymore. I don't care about it anymore. I'm sorry, but Rise of Skywalker was the last fucking straw for me. I'm done. Done. What a shitty fucking movie. Oh my God, you think I'm a fucking retard that I'm going to watch that? Where did you learn how to tell a story? I mean, it's contrived. The characters are shallow. Who makes a major motion picture with the main characters a Mary Sue? Seriously? I'm sorry, guys. I don't like fan fiction. So I don't watch that shit no more. I don't watch Star Trek no more. I don't watch Doctor Who no more. And that's why these franchises are failing. They're not failing because people are watching it and criticizing it. They're failing because people aren't watching it. And that's me. Okay? That's me. I'm done. I don't watch that crap anymore. And don't blame Critical Drinker. Because I stopped watching Disney Star Wars years before I even started watching YouTube. Okay? I'm kind of a newcomer here. Right? I didn't have... I wasn't informed to dislike Rise of Skywalker. I went there with my son, and he loved it. He was a child. He was like 6, right? Spaceships, laser guns, space pirates. Yeah, he loved it. He don't love it no more. He's 12 now. You know, he said to me just about a week ago, I can't stand what they're doing with Star Wars. Now, I'm sure he picked a lot of that up at school, right? Because we don't watch that crap in this house. So how would he know? But isn't 12, I mean, when you say, now I found the whole thing kind of weird when you were like, oh, don't be such a nitpicker about the plot. This is a children's show. Yeah, I found that a little weird when I was seeing all the excerpts of the show of, you know, naked people staring at each other's private parts. But hey, you know, I guess maybe raising children is different now. But no, my son isn't going to be exposed to that nonsense. And I don't watch it because I don't care anymore. I just don't care. And that is why you fail. A very wise man once said that. Anyway, stop picking on these guys. And let me ask you something. How is it that Critical Drinker is a problem, but Snarky J Cosplay isn't? You never bring her up. How is it that Nerdrotic is a problem, but that Star Wars girl isn't? How is... Someone explain that to me. Oh, wait a minute. I think I know. It's because these are women. And you kind of look stupid when you start accusing them of being misogynists. They don't kind of fit the narrative, so we're just going to pretend that they don't exist. Because that's feminism for you. So frustrating. So frustrating. You know, ladies, well, I'm sure the people watching me, right? Probably most of you aren't ladies, but Star Wars was always for you. It always was. You just got hooked into this weird corporate feminism, where it's not good enough that Princess Leia is a leader of men. That's not good enough. It's not good enough that she took this country bumpkin and this blackguard and turned them into heroes of the Republic. No, that's not good enough. No, she's got to be a Mary Sue, apparently, in order to be good enough for modern corporate feminism. Yeah, I'm done. I'm out. And that's why you're going to keep losing a ton of money when you try to capitalize on the brands that I helped you build. And that's not Critical Drinker's fault. It's yours. And that's not Nerdrotic's fault. It's yours. It is Snarky J Cosplay's fault, though. Totally her fault. Go get her. No, seriously. Come get me. Because I'm your real problem. Not them. They still care enough to watch your show. I don't. So, don't bother tuning in next week when I do my point-for-point review, critique of episode 3 of what is it they're talking about these days? Oh, episode 3 of season 2, Rings of Power, because I won't be making that show because I'm not going to watch it. And I'm not going to watch it because y'all suck. Y'all suck. You took the most meaningful years of some of the most meaningful hours of my college life talking about the lore of Lord of the Rings and respecting the work of Professor Tolkien and trying to read into his, and you took it and you fucked it. I tuned in to watch a TV show, and you know what I saw? I saw this. That's what I saw. That's what you gave me on my screen. Okay? So yeah. Disney Prime, I got a message for you. Disney, I got a message for you. Hey, keep it up. Maybe your modern audiences will turn out for you next time.